It's quite interesting because I thought for a long time, why are we a cult? I understand when people see infrared and think it's a cult. I actually think that's not an unreasonable judgment at face value. And the reason it seems like it's a cult is because of the contrast of the information ecosystem, the content of the information ecosystem that's within infrared. The contrast between that information ecosystem and the one that's for the general public is too stark and it's too great to be justified by our numbers. There's too few of us for it to be justified to a normal person why our information ecosystem is so different from that of the general public. The things we regard as true, the worldview that we share, even our basic experience of time is so radically different. And you know, that wouldn't necessarily be a cult if this was like tens of thousands of people, right? Or hundreds of thousands of people. But it's not. It's much smaller than that, right? So it seems like it's a cult, that I'm just like this cult leader who has a leash on all of you. I have a hold over, I have all your information. I know who all of you are. I keep tabs on you. I have to make sure you're all brainwashed. I have to, call you on Skype every day and ensure your loyalty. And, I have to send people to your house or something to just force you and contain you into this community, right? But that's not how infrared works, and that's what's so paradoxical. Although there is such a stark contrast in terms of the information ecosystem, there's not a lot of control within infrared at all. The only control is whether or not you get banned from the Discord. And the only way you get banned from the Discord is if you break Discord's TOS, which we're obliged to enforce. And we also have like 4 other rules. You can't be a minor. You have to be over the age of 18. You can't have an anime profile picture, and you can't, nothing anime related, nothing sexual. All sexual stuff is banned. And you can't be weird. And I guess that's like a discretion, that's up to our discretion, I guess. And that's literally it. We don't even enforce ideology. You can actually be any ideology. Come into the server, and as long as you don't break any of the rules I just mentioned, you're not going to be banned. You're not going to be reprimanded. Now, if you express disagreement and everyone tells you get in VC and prove that you're correct versus Haas, that's cult-like behavior. But that's not cult-like behavior. That's people who want to see with their own eyes whether you can stand on business and defend what you're defending. If I'm a world boxing champion, and these people have seen with their own eyes how I have KO'd every single opponent, and then somebody new comes in and challenge and says, "Oh, I'm a better boxer than Haas," and they want to see for their own eyes whether you can square up. That's not a cult. That's just people who have actually seen with their own eyes how I've demonstrated the superiority of my position. And then when they see how my ideological opponents respond to that, or I should rather say the lack of the response to that, the lack of their inability to address anything I say, the way in which they just distort all of it and turn it, I say one thing and they say that I'm saying something else, but you guys are here for the stream watching me, seeing clearly, watching clearly how I didn't say anything close to that or even mean anything close to that. How they make things up about me. You guys have been with me, a lot of you, through times where we were doing like 6 to 10 hour streams a day. You guys kind of know what kind of person I am, I think. Kind of know a little bit about who I am. They try to malign my character and make me out to be something that I'm not. You guys who have seen with your own eyes how that's not the case, double down and you start to become more loyal to infrared. And why? Because you realize that out there, outside of this community, that is not where the truth is. That's where lies are. That's the dominion of lies. And you don't think that because I forced you to think it. You've seen it with your own eyes. This is not a cult where we're like forcing people. If you stay in this community and interact with it for 2 months, which is kind of too much, 1 month, let's say, right? You may not agree. You may not agree with you may be an anime person who's like, I don't agree. I like to jack off to hentai. I don't like how they stop me from doing that, or they don't allow me to brag about doing it, whatever. But like the whole cult thing is going to fall apart and you're going to see with your own eyes how things work around here. It's not like that. The reason it's not like that is because we don't actually ban opposing views. Just get in VC and see if you can stand on business. Because I will rationally communicate my position to you. Agree with it or don't agree with it. That's on your conscience. But when you start lying about what my position actually is and what I actually say and clipping me out of context or something, it doesn't work. It's going to maybe convince people outside of this information ecosystem, and that's mainly the goal for most of these people, but it's not going to convince people who have watched me from the beginning. It's not going to convince people who have actually been here for the ride. And it's like, I feel like one of the reasons we're so adamant about the VC thing is we're just trying to see if you can stand on business. You could type whatever you want on Twitter or anywhere else. Type whatever you want, but can you actually defend your belief with your voice? Can you actually use your voice to defend it? Because when you're using your voice, you're investing a lot more skin in the game as far as who you are as a person into this belief than if you're just like typing behind a keyboard, behind a screen. Like, no, use your voice. I want to see what it means for a human being to have the belief that you have. And if you can't use your voice, your belief probably isn't authentic. Your position probably isn't authentic. Your views, your worldview isn't based in a concrete humanness that anyone could respect. It's always based in a bluff, right? Whether it's pan-leftists or right-wingers, the common denominator behind people who don't want to debate with their voice is basically like, or communicate their, you don't even have to debate, just present your claims using your voice. It doesn't have to be a debate. You know, debate may be a wrong word because a debate is like formal or whatever. Just like stand on business using your voice, like actually articulate your disagreement using your voice, right? Or make the claims that you're claiming about me using your voice in a where I can respond to it in real time, where everyone can see who's correct or who's false, right? Usually, though, pan-leftists or right-wingers will just defer to some other authority. I don't have to use my voice because, like, the reason I believe this is true is because, like, some other guy who's really smart believes it's true. And who is that person? Oh, it's some guy in, like, a university who wears glasses or something. Yeah, it's like, it's never actually something that, like, an actual person can relate to. It's always this bluff of a big other somewhere that you're drawing from. And I don't think people find that very convincing anymore. Yes, there's a huge contrast in terms of the perception of infrared outside of infrared and within. So the people see that as a red flag of a cult, right? But clearly the reason for that is because people have seen with their own eyes one thing, and then they've seen how in the open society, let's call it that, the open society, the discourse, something else is being said that contradicts what they've experienced themselves, seen with their own eyes and heard with their own eyes. So that's an extremely radicalizing experience, which makes people less trustful of the open society discourse and kind of forces people to like acknowledge that, okay, we need an alternative media ecosystem where like, okay, gorillas, we don't know everything, but like you've seen that with your own eyes, right? All the gorillas are in the jungle, right? And all of them are like looking at each other in the jungle like, You seen what this, you seen Haas? You seen Haas? Yeah, I seen Haas. You seen what he said? Yeah, I seen what he said. All the gorillas in the jungle are just like, all right, like we don't have all the answers to the universe, but like we've clearly heard what this guy said, and all of these swine on the other part of the jungle, all these hogs and swine are like oinking some different thing, like slandering him and slandering his message. I mean, that's why there's a separation, because you guys are lying, and we try to show you the truth, and what do? You start name calling and babbling, right? And then and then the gorillas will literally go to the other. This is why infrared became a cult, right? A cult, because the gorillas literally went to the other side of the jungle, and they're like, "Hey, spider monkey, go hear it for yourself." Spider monkey's on the other side of the jungle, and spider monkey's going, "Oh, this Haas guy, he can't even beat his chest loud enough." So gorillas will hear that, they'll go to the other side of the jungle, and they'll tell the spider monkey, "Bro, go up to him yourself, and let's see who can beat their chest louder. Go up to him yourself, and see it with your own eyes." And the spider monkey is like, "No, frick you, you're a fascist, you're a patsock." It's like, all right, so you can't prove it, right? Like the gorillas out here are literally trying to show people what they themselves have experienced. And like the spider monkeys and the hogs and the swine are just like, they're not being rational. We're like, the gorillas are communicating our argument. They're communicating what we actually think and say. We're not getting a rational response as a disagreement or an agreement. It doesn't have to be an agreement. You can rationally disagree with us. I mean, like, okay, well, I disagree with that, and here's why I think it's wrong. We have never gotten a response like that from an enemy. We've never gotten anything like that. There's no rational response to us. So that does something to you. If we are standing on business, if I'm communicating something and there is no hostile and rational response to it, it is going to create a highly tight-knit information ecosystem where people are less trusting of what spider monkeys and hogs are saying because it contradicts what they see and hear with their own eyes and ears. So, like, that's why infrared is the way it is when it comes to infrared. Now, the second thing that makes the average person think this is a cult, right, is our political views on Stalin, on the Soviet Union, on China, on North Korea. It's like completely contrary to what the open society says. We maintain views about history, about current existing states, about ideas, about science, which clearly contradict the mainstream. So we must be a cult because we have alternative views. We believe in alternative facts, if you will, right? It's actually related to the first thing I mentioned, though, because the reason infrared is called a cult, for the same reason North Korea or the Soviet Union or China were called totalitarian. Because people living in those countries or have lived through the experiences of those countries' history experienced one thing. And then the open society of the West is claiming a lot of bizarre nonsense to the complete contrary. So that creates what? Closed societies, closed information ecosystems where people do not trust what the West or the open society is saying anymore. They're just like, that doesn't square with reality. A good example of this actually is Netflix's adaptation of the Three-Body Problem recently. I was watching a review of it by like some Chinese woman. It was in English. Her review was in English. And she was basically communicating how on Chinese social media, they just found the Netflix adaptation's depiction of the Cultural Revolution to be ridiculous. Just exactly what I said, right? Ridiculous and like in contradiction. And she's like, this guy who is writing it or whatever is from Hong Kong. He never experienced what the Cultural Revolution was. So mainlander Chinese people who either have experienced the Cultural Revolution themselves or have had parents or grandparents who experienced it will look at the Netflix adaptation, look at its ridiculous depiction of China in the 60s, and be like, that is just not what that's not what we saw with our own two eyes. That's not what we experienced, okay? That's something totally outlandish and totally different. So when China starts insisting upon a history and the general Chinese public starts insisting on a historical memory and a history that contradicts the prestigious mainstream of the open society, that doesn't mean they're totalitarian or that they're brainwashed or that China is a cult. It means that you have ruined the credibility of open flows of information as reliable and accurate ways of communicating the truth. In order for truth to be communicated, it has to be communicated in such a way that acknowledges a degree of the exclusivity of experience. Closed societies actually communicate the truth better than open societies do. Because in an open society, any idiot can run their mouth saying anything they want. And lies can dominate because there's nothing that's going to verify or check those lies, because institutions alone are what are the highest authorities, can basically lie about reality to whatever extent they want. There's no checking power of like the exclusivity of experience, of what people are actually seeing with their own eyes and hearing with their own ears and like living their lives with. That's not a check on institutions at all. A good example of that discrepancy, by the way, is Trump's MAGA movement itself. The open society institutions were communicating one reality, right? And the only check on that false reality they were communicating, that empire of lies, was this populist movement of just like people insisting upon the integrity and exclusivity of their collective experience. Oh, Obama's claiming the economy is doing well, but I'm here with my family and with my community. I don't know anybody who's experiencing a good economy right now. I don't know anybody who's experiencing, the cost of living going down or the job situation getting particularly better. My community has a fentanyl crisis, and people are getting addicted to drugs and dying. But what the media and what the academic institutions are saying of the open society is totally different. So if Trump comes here and just recognizes the exclusivity of your experience and gives recognition to that, and you start to trust him instead of the institutions because he's established an exclusive channel of the flow of information where people can come together and just be like, okay, I recognize you, you recognize me. Just like the gorillas in the forest. Y'all seen that, right? Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, you saw that, right? Yeah, I saw it. That's all that's going on. People are coming together and mutually recognizing the exclusivity of their experience. And they say, oh, that MAGA's a cult. That's the cult of Trump. And it's like, that's not what's going on. Because we saw how his own crowd was booing him over the vaccine, right? Well, why was that? Because that same dynamic was going on. The institutions were saying one thing about the vaccine, but then people on the ground level were insisting upon an experience that contradicts that. So you see, it's actually it's quite peculiar that the MAGA movement identifies the Democrats and the open society with communism. Because in countries like China or the Soviet Union or North Korea or any other communist state, it's actually this exclusivity of historical experience and collective feeling and collective experience that reigns supreme as the supreme political power. That's why these are closed societies. They're not closed simply because they're censoring flows of information coming from the West and they're preventing the free flow of information. That's not what makes them closed. What makes them closed is that they're enclosing the basis of truth. The basis of truth is something exclusive. It's a specific experience. It's a specific history. It's a specific collective experience that we're all having, and we are agreeing to mutually recognize the shared reality we're living in as a specific reality, not an indiscriminate, indeterminate, open, free flow of information from the abstract, from institutions that have to be verified by empiricists. We're saying, no, we are all in real time seeing the same thing happening, experiencing the same thing happening, and we're no longer scared to step forward and say, hey, something's going on here. It's like that scene in Network. I'm going to explain to you how this is the default. I don't have to tell you. This is the default form of collective experience that dominates closed societies. This is how North Koreans articulate their truth, rather than abstract institutions verifying it with empiricism.
If anybody's yelling.
There we go. So here, this is a totalitarian closed society in the making, right? People are coming together and just literally shouting out the window, engaging in a determinate, concrete, mutual recognition of a shared collective experience and insisting upon the exclusivity of that experience. They're not waiting for experts or scientists or people with glasses to come and verify the empirical truth of their collective experience. They are articulating their existence in such a way that they're enclosing the truth in the society of reality. They're enclosing it as something in particular. The fact that they're mad as hell in this case. And that is the foundation of closed societies, actually. That's the foundation of the proletarian dictatorship. That's how China... See, in China, the reason people remember the Cultural Revolution in the specific way that they do is because in China, just like these people yelling out the window, everybody actually experienced it or has family members that experienced it. So if you go to China and lie to them about what they themselves have experienced, this is going to be the response. They're going to yell out the window and call you an idiot. Just like gorillas will pile on and aggressively respond to people lying to them and to the public about infrared and about me personally, right? And it's a similar dynamic actually. Like people for some reason, MAGA people think it's the opposite. They think that, oh, in communism it's totalitarian, so the government is lying to you about what you're experiencing in real time, and you just have to take it and accept it. It's like nothing could be further from the truth. The opposite is actually true. It's the open society that tells us if something happens and we see it with our own eyes, no, they're right and we're wrong, right? If I'm an American and I go to LA and it's like a shithole, and the Biden administration tells me like how great LA is right now and like how there's no homeless, super clean. No, I'm wrong, and they're right. If the Biden administration claims that America's actually like revolutionizing its infrastructure and it's getting way better, and I'm here on the ground and I'm experiencing that it hasn't, I am going to get fact-checked and community noted because I'm wrong. Okay, I'm one person, but all my neighbors agree with me. Everyone I know at my work job agrees with me. All of their relatives agree with me. Everyone they know agrees with them. So we, the people, are experiencing one thing, and they're telling us something entirely different from that. It's not based on ideology, okay? It's not like the people, or infrared for that matter, are insisting upon the sanctity of an ideology. All I've done is present ideas. I agree, and people have been persuaded by those ideas. But that's not what made this a cult. What made this a cult is the bad faith, slanderous, libelous, defamatory way, or dishonest way at minimum, in which those ideas were responded to. Like, for example, when right-wingers claim, oh, infrared is just brown third worldists. Why does that provoke a cult-like response in you poking the beehive? Is it because they struck a nerve? Is it because they landed that on the target? No. It's because many of you were here in 2021 when infrared got canceled for being pat socks, for the exact opposite, for insisting upon American communism, for insisting upon socialist patriotism as a fundamental part of what Marxism-Leninism is. Some of you have also experienced how infrared has always had a Eurasianist orientation that actually has put it into conflict with global Southism or whatever. So it's just like couldn't be further from the truth. And you guys know that because you've literally seen and heard it and have been here for the ride the whole time to experience it yourselves. When they claim that we're fascists or we're somehow secretly neo-Nazis, and you guys have been here for so long seeing me debate far-right people, and how my message has been consistent the entire time, especially recently, taking really aggressive steps to counteract that ideology, you guys aren't having any of it because you were literally here for the ride, experiencing the whole thing, and they're out there in the open society telling you something that literally contradicts what you've experienced and seen with your own eyes and heard with your own two ears. So that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about enclosed information ecosystems versus open information ecosystems. Here's the truth. We do need to engage with the open information ecosystem, but none of us are under the illusion that that is a crucible of truth. If you want the truth, you need to be in some kind of enclosed information ecosystem where there's a minimum of mutual recognition based on exclusive shared mutual experience that's established. Otherwise, how can you communicate the truth? How do you know what's true and what's not true? At the bare minimum, let's just agree, like Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am. Okay, we're here. We can clearly communicate with each other. Okay, going forward, you've seen that, right? Yeah, I saw that. Imagine you're stranded in the woods with like 5 people, and like you straight up just like see a UFO. It's like you're not forming a cult when all 5 of you who have experienced the same thing and nobody believes you, and all the 5 of you stick together and share information and continue sharing what you've experienced and building upon it. You're not in a cult just because there's a stark contrast going on there, okay? That's what's going on when it comes to infrared. Not only infrared, but how every proletarian movement forms is the opposite of an open society. It's where the proletariat, you know what class consciousness is? What do you think? You think class consciousness is when people say, well, you know, Dr. Fauci said, no, that's not class consciousness. Class consciousness is when workers come, hey, I'm a worker working in this factory. You too, yeah. We have a shared class experience, one that's actually shared, that makes us have a shared culture, that makes us have a shared demographic reality, makes us have a shared sense of social existence. We are going to insist upon our class truth, a particular truth, not the open society. Oh, yeah, the impersonal institutions of the... No, we're going to insist upon the impersonal truth, which is simultaneously deeply personal, of the proletarian class. You know, it couldn't be further from what they claim. It couldn't be further from how pan-leftists articulate basic Marxism in terms of how they understand information ecosystems. The EFF in South Africa is a cult, okay? The Chavismo in Venezuela, that's a cult, right? Because it's an enclosed media... MAGA is also a cult, right? Because they're enclosed information and media ecosystems built upon the recognition that in that dark forest called the open society, that is not a crucible of truth. Again, we need to intervene there. I'm not saying we retreat from the open information ecosystem and abandon that ground and abandon that territory to the enemy. I wouldn't be streaming on Kick if that's what I thought. I would set up my own website and like only vet IGG people, and we would just like circle jerk together for like the next 100 years, and I would just like live, you know, forcing you to give me monthly subscriptions individually and like hound you for more donations all the time, you know, and like call your mom and call your house and be like, hey, have you contributed to the cause? And like that's the kind of relationship we would have. That's not the relationship we have, is it? What's actually going on is that I am broadcasting this message to the general public, but we have formed an exclusive information ecosystem built upon the recognition that a whole lot of wacky nonsense BS proliferates in the open media ecosystem, where people think Stalin killed 100 million people, and people think Mao killed 1 billion people, and people think that DNA is a gene, and people think Lysenko was completely wrong and nothing he said was true at all. And people think that, you know, people think all sorts of wacky nonsense that's clearly and demonstrably false, and that Kim Jong-un eats babies or something. Yeah, that's what they believe over there, okay? That's what they believe. But it's not true. You're not going to get the truth just by being a passive consumer who reads the New York Times and just like is in the open society, and that's how you're going to get your information. That is not where you're going to get the truth. Truth is something that can only be built based off of an exclusive shared experience of reality, a mutual recognition, a dialectical process where once we've established we have a common reality, which is not something we have in America. We just have authorities and institutions barking down at us, telling us what the truth is and what reality is. There's nothing common about that. We don't share it with them, right? Because we don't have access to their really refined particle accelerators and complicated technologies that the scientists and lab coats have that have allowed them to deduce that Mao killed 80 million people, right? We don't have access to that, and we have no way of vetting that. We're just peasants who know nothing about reality, right? Totally not a bluff. Anyway, if you want to actually arrive at the truth, you do need to join a cult. The reason the Bolsheviks were able to understand Russia's reality better than anyone else is because they had this exclusive... First of all, they said, okay, we're all here committed to Marxism. We're all here committed to a specific method called Marxism and the application of that method and recording the results that method yields in a consistent way. That's science, by the way. And look, if some bourgeois idiot wants to come and tell us that what we Bolsheviks, we seasoned Bolsheviks, have experienced have seen, have recorded, and with our own two eyes and our own two ears, he can kick rocks. That guy can kick rocks because we Bolsheviks have a shared and mutual recognition that we are experiencing a common reality with each other.